Welcome to Revolution Radio. Um, so, Scott, you were telling me about this, we'll say, interesting piece that Tucker Carlson did last night on the January 6th attack and the FBI, and they potentially have some sort of connection in with the insiders themselves. What do you got on that?
Well, so this is by the means no excuse for people acting the way they did, but Tucker just presented some information that's true and then has extrapolated his own theory based on the fact that what he needs to prove his theory is not publicly accessible yet. And while I find it pretty interesting, it's not something I would put past the FBI, just simply because I have a low opinion of law enforcement to begin with. And they definitely have proven in the past that they are willing to just about frame people. They tried to frame some homeless men a few years ago for a bomb plot where they supplied.
Do you want to go ahead before you start that? Do you want to explain what Tucker was talking about?
So Tucker basically insinuates the fact that we know from court filings associated with the prosecution of people who were involved in the rioting kind of involvement into the Capitol House on January 6th, that they had, say if there was 120 people or 112, they had at least 10% of those people were FBI informants that were participating in the mayhem, kind of acting the part, so to speak, even some of the things that were considered to be violent. And so they used those informants' information to prosecute some of these people. And his opinion of it was that the FBI has shown in the past that they're willing to use informants to not only participate and be witnesses to these things, but also to provide things like, well, I can help you organize, or I've got a group of people that can get you this or can get you that. And which he is insinuating the next step, which is they basically helped organize the people who were willing to break into the building and go forth. And all the other media is calling it a conspiracy theory, and at this point it is. But my only gripe about that is the FBI has been shown to do these things from past administrations, whether it be to frame some homeless guys for a terrorism act by providing them with every single thing they needed along the way. Like, well, we don't have a bomb. No problem. We'll get you that bomb. Do you need guns here? Do you need transportation? Like, just got some guys, homeless guys that were mad at America or mad at administration, and literally set them up to be busted as homegrown terrorism, where it was never happened if the FBI had not just, you know what I mean? They weren't people online. They weren't people on street corners saying. So the bad behavior by our law enforcement and FBI and you could say the terrorism thing would be for, say the Bush administration, or, any time that we needed a boogeyman, the FBI would find one.
Or I think in the case, if I remember correctly, in the case with the homeless men, I believe it was under Obama, and Obama was threatening to cut funds, and so they used this as a look at this big case that we broke open because we had the funds or something of that nature, if I remember right.
I think you're 100% right. And my point is we have seen the FBI act under political and financial motivations on a partisan level. So we did see that during the impeachment of Trump with some of the FBI officials there. They were not impartial, and they definitely were acting under Comey's attitude towards Trump, and they are not infallible of doing these things in order to accomplish. Now, did all those people, did they organize the whole thing? No. But remember, there are only a tiny percentage of people that got wild and idiotic and ran up there to do something like that. And it doesn't take much push to take anybody in the public, to do stupid things. You're always going to have some people who are, so we have to remember that the FBI is not there to help you. Sometimes they are there to set you up, and we need more information to verify any of this, and that's going to require a lot of time and subpoenas, because if it's true that there were FBI informants actually organizing some of these people to do that, then that oversteps their bounds, but they're not afraid to do that. So as of now, I'd say it's very interesting. I don't put it past the FBI to do dirty tricks. The thing also with Governor Whitmer, she was supposed to have been abducted by a group of extremists, that were dissatisfied in Michigan, and as that turned out to be 3 of the 6 people who were, quote, grabbed for that before it happened, the plot, 3 of the 6 were FBI informants. So at what point does this group actually become a group without the help of the FBI guys kind of, facilitating their, quote, abduction that never happened? I mean, it's just silly.
I think that's an interesting question and point to bring up. Like, at the end of the day, like, before I give my piece on what you were talking about, I do think that right there though is a really juicy question. If you're there about to smoke crack with a cop and you don't know it's a cop, but you're like, I would smoke crack, but I don't have crack, and he gave it to you, like, yeah, you're still smoking crack, no doubt about it. But you wouldn't if you hadn't had it. Like, do you know what I'm saying? I'm breaking it down to the lowest common denominator there.
Then the next thing you know, they're getting you for, distribution or being trying to sell crack because you have more than what you would consume.
Right. Yeah, like,
kind of thing.
It's disturbing that these people in, like, the militia with Whitmer, like, wanted to take it that far. Honestly, it's disturbing if we have that at this level. Like, I understand the despair that they might have been under. I do get that, and that doesn't go without sympathy for me. But it is disturbing that we have those people. But at the same time, most of the times we're limited by our ability to gain access to certain things, or our ability
Right.
to, so if that's granted, well, yeah, how many
facilitate it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's framing people, and not that they weren't angry and he wants to go shoot up his school, but he doesn't have any guns. Does the FBI come in and give him a couple handguns, with high capacity, clips, and just to nab him because he doesn't know that they're not blanks, and then put him away when he brings them to school, where they knew he was going to bring him to school when he never would have done it in the first place? He hadn't tried to acquire guns in the past until he was approached by the FBI. That kind of thing.
Yeah,
is like,
I agree.
And of course they would never do that to a school deal.
No, of course.
Because that would be horrible optics. But it's a lot easier to swallow when it's adults doing something irresponsible, and it definitely can fit a political agenda, or at least help demonize one group over another. Like you were saying, during the Obama administration, and they wanted to make sure military funding for terrorism kept its pace, and so they facilitate kind of an action that would have never happened if the FBI hadn't literally groomed people to do it.
And again, I agree. Before I start my take on this whole thing, I agree with what you're saying as far as the FBI, and yeah, we've seen this done before. All of that. Number one, I can't find a motive for why they would do this. Meaning they haven't moved on any sort of Patriot Act 2.0 kind of thing. They haven't moved on anything like that. There's nothing being brought up that, oh God, we really need to investigate this. My other issue with why I'm not sure that this is a legit story, so it's the optics, right? Like we were talking about it yesterday. Between a couple weeks ago and around late August is known as the dead zone, because stuff just doesn't happen politically. And so what do? Well, if you're Fox News or you're CNN or MSNBC, and the majority of what you do is manufactured hate, and then you start playing up whatever you have. And right now, both sides just keep bringing up January 6th. They're obsessed with it on both sides. And I think it's funny because Tucker Carlson has taken this hard turn. I don't know if you remember, but when they were voting on whether or not to have a January 6th commission to look into this, he was he was appalled by the idea that we would do this. And now he's saying the Democrats don't want you to know more information. Well, that's not true. Actually, the Democrats did want to have an investigation into it, and it was the others that didn't. But and I'll tell you this, like for me, it's Russiagate. It's Trump working with Russia. It's that that's where this is falling on my ear because let's go through last 5 months. All right, I think day of even you were telling me, dude, there's reports it's Antifa. Okay, looking for a week or two for they're writing the it was Antifa thing. Then turns out, well, it actually wasn't that bad at all. I've heard many people on the right, including politicians, say, well, if they didn't make such a big deal about it, you wouldn't know if it was just a group who was having a tour or people breaking in. No, I saw a video, homie. Like that wasn't just a sightseeing group. And then then we have well, Trump didn't actually incite it. It was the people. And a lot of them were Black Lives Matter and Antifa anyway, but this has nothing to do with Trump. We just heard Alex Jones this weekend say that the FBI contacted him and told him what to do and how to organize it. I don't remember seeing Alex Jones there. And Alex Jones, he's somewhere, he is there. I mean, you know it. But you see what I'm saying? Like, the right just keeps coming up with reason after reason after excuse. And I think in the end, you didn't want to look into it. Okay, cool. You want to move on past it. Cool. Well, move on past it. You know what I'm saying? Like, we had the opportunity to investigate it. I agree. Maybe the investigation would have been biased. I don't know. But, like, you can't say, look at this information that we have. Oh, look at this conspiracy here that has to do with this incident. But yet you don't want an investigation? That would be like you saying, oh, we shouldn't look into UFOs. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I
You know
still
what I'm saying?
consider it a conspiracy theory because the sheer fact of it, it's going to be based on, I mean, even he says himself, after he's kind of extrapolated this, that they haven't released the documents that would verify, and they haven't released any camera footage. And I never thought it was Antifa that got in there. It was more of a question of they had identified a couple people who were associated with Antifa, who kind of just went with the flow, and they were laughing. I mean, 'cause they were having fun with the Trump.
Yeah, they were messing with them. Yeah. No,
yeah, and they dressed the part too.
Let me address the one last point I have on why I don't buy this one as much, and that's because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but some of those that have already been arrested are like as high up as there's been many law enforcement officers. Like, so why would they need to work through them if they could just work through the law enforcement officers? And you know what I'm saying? Like, doesn't that make just as much sense?
And I agree, but the names of some of those law enforcement officers who we know were law enforcement based on pictures, some of them have continued to be redacted. So there's a possibility that some of those law enforcement officers were some of the informants. But we haven't, which would make sense. And at the same time, like I said, it's all based on all this. And I do understand where you're coming from as far as I just don't trust the FBI. That's really what this comes down to.
I think the core of what your story is, I think I'm totally all in. I just kind of wish that we could move on past this. Like, and I know it's weird coming from the left, but I don't think anyone on the right who didn't participate in this should be hamstrung as like terrorists and, oh, look at those people. I mean, it was an incident. It was incredibly unfortunate. At the end of the day, if I'm being honest, and I'm being Bill Burr brutally honest, we lost 5 Trump supporters or 4 Trump supporters and like 1 cop.
And that cop didn't die from injuries associated with what happened then. He had a heart attack later.
No, I
So
think didn't. I'm pretty sure one did die from like
no, that
head
was the only
trauma.
one. Yeah, he got hit with something, but he didn't die from that at all. He basically had recovered from that. He died from a heart attack.
Well, some could argue, like that
Well,
led to it, but
anytime
it
you go
doesn't
in the
matter. But I'm
hospital,
saying populist left of me says, you know what? I'll take less cops, and you know what I'm saying? Like that's a horrible, like I said, brutal Bill Burr take on it. Of like, well, we didn't lose anybody that I really give a shit about, so
yeah, no,
who
and,
can,
I'm
I
pretty
mean,
much with you there, which is kind
if
of bad.
if there was
The
like a
only person I
janitor
feel
or
sorry
something,
for is the one woman who was shot through a window randomly, and we do not know the identification of that Capitol Police
we
officer that
won't.
lost his. Yeah, and by the way, there were other armed officers, fully armed in suits, standing
But
in the general area. So that guy just
okay,
lost his shit. And
can
shot
I
through a
say
window.
this though about that situation? Because I know there's a lot of sympathy for her. I have no sympathy for her at all. Like there was a politician right by him. Obviously they haven't mentioned the name who it was. They were telling him stop. She busted through that glass. Like, I'm sorry, what more do you want? Like, they're trying. That's the bodyguard. Like, they don't know what these people's intentions are. And I mean, you remember they were walking around with a guillotine, saying that they wanted to hang Pence. I, you can't run with that group, meet law enforcement and not expect it. This is the same situation where we have
Right. I
that
mean,
black
I expect
teenager who was about to
somebody
stab that
calls
other
the cops on you
teenager.
for a welfare call. That's a really good chance of you just getting shot because you had a mental breakdown or something.
No, this is way different. Again, this is the same situation of that black teenager about to stab the other teenager and she got shot. I'm sorry, you were doing something that was potentially super dangerous to someone else and no one knows your intentions. Amid like this massive amount of chaos. Like, yeah, I don't have the sympathy for her, but
Well, it's not more or less sympathy for hers as much as it is accountability for police who randomly shoot
well,
random people.
I don't think he was a cop. I'm pretty sure he was
Oh,
like
he's Capitol.
CIA.
He's a Capitol police officer.
Was he really?
I mean, they don't dress in uniforms, but they dress in a suit, but they're Capitol police officers.
See, I was pretty sure I'd heard he was like one of the Secret Service guys.
Well, it'd be hard to differentiate between,
It really
I mean,
would,
the
yeah.
Secret Service and that. But the point of it is, it's just I'm not convinced it's a reality just because the FBI has done similar things in the past, but I don't put it past them. But at this point, it is until that information gets released, and that information will be released, just like anything else that the U.S. government deems necessary to keep secret for domestic security and everything else. So
Right.
who knows?
And they
But,
probably don't want to admit too that a lot of these people that they let them in. So there's that. Too.
Yeah,
But anyway,
absolutely.
we are going to be educated on the current
In
situation
order to
going
begin
on
with.
UFOs, and I don't even think that's the proper name anymore. I need to stop saying that. But anyway, we're gonna find out more.
No, you can still say it.
It's not PC. It's not woke to say UFO anymore. Anyway, we'll be right back.